My grandpa always used to say something. He said, you can be rich, that's a moment in time. Or you can be wealthy, and that means you lived a good life. People speak about you positively. They say you did something. And most of all, you got a family that loves you. And that's how you create wealth. And those are the big lessons that I've learned and why I stay despite all the challenges.
You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in.
All right, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Jeremy Petersen, the founder, president, and CEO over at Identity Pet Nutrition. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Can't wait to have you on today. Can you start out with an overview? What is Identity Pet Nutrition? What do you guys do over there?
Identity Pet Nutrition is a new age pet food company. So we are one of the first pet food companies to ever launch and focus exclusively on wet dog and cat food. We launched in 2018 with a canned product, and we're really the first ones to bring quality to canned pet foods, which at the time were known for really inferior quality ingredients and not as high quality. And since then, we've grown, and we're now into a gently cooked product. If you've ever heard of the farmer's dog, most people have. It's a product like that, but with about 3 times more meat. And so we've really focused in on, we believe in human grade nutrition, which separates us from most pet food companies, which are focused on feed grade nutrition. And we're focused on meat content in an industry that increasingly uses label games, and I'll call them fillers like peas or legumes, which are high in protein, to try and mask meat proteins and create a product that's affordable for the pet parent, but it's not really what that pet parent thinks it is. And so we've really focused on being transparent. What our product is what you see. It's based in meat. We're probably the highest meat content pet food available in the market. And that's really differentiated us. And it's come from 3 generations where my brother and I started the company. We're 3rd generation pet food entrepreneurs. And so we've spent our life growing up around this industry, in this industry. We started 2 brands prior to this, which were a little bit different. And those experiences have helped guide the innovation and commitments that we're making as a small business today in an industry that's increasingly dominated by private equity groups or conglomerate, large multi-billion-dollar corporations, to stand apart and produce a transparent, fair, very high-quality product for pet parents throughout the United States and Canada at this point.
Love it. That was wonderful. You have a wild story about how you got started with Identity. Can you take us back to the previous business and talk us through how you ended up starting Identity from there?
Yeah, so Identity's, I call it my life's work. It's my mea culpa, I guess you could say. And it comes from a lot of difficulties. The journey's been really difficult to get to where we're at today, finally starting to make a big mark. But back in 2012, I had graduated in 2011 from the University of Michigan, worked out there for a year, and then moved back to Colorado. And I wanted to become an investment banker. And I was in the middle of a long interview process to try and become an investment banker. But the interview process was like 21 rounds. I was on round like 14 or 15, I think, maybe 16, getting deep into it, but it was going months across the summer. And so my dad said, you need to keep your mind busy. Come in. I started delivering to neighborhood pet stores, different products. He was a distributor and he was trying to start an online pet company. And I helped him get out of some bad situations there. He was getting taken advantage of on the online business by a marketing guy. And after helping him with that, he came to me one day and said, hey, you really helped me here. Would you like to help me start our own brand of pet food? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, but I have one condition. We have to make it quality because I'm all about quality and it has to look good. The packaging has to resonate. I grew up at 11 years old went to work in the family business in warehouses and watching other pet food brands and the packaging. And it wasn't striking. The pet food industry wasn't known for good packaging. And creating a story really starts the first consumer interaction a lot of times is that packaging. So I wanted to make sure that it was visually pleasing. And so that led us on a search to try and find a quality graphics artist to help us. And so one day in, I think it was August or September of 2012, my dad and I drove into the town of Greeley, Colorado, where I grew up, and we met with an individual named Gary. And my dad put out some thoughts. I put out a lot of my thoughts. And that turned into, from that day on, us starting a pet food company called Wild Calling Pet Foods. We went from zero to $8.5 million in basically 2 years. So it was a really popular, fast growing company. I helped lead a lot of that, but then things started to change as we got bigger. My dad brought in, I don't know how to put it, older management. I'm 23 years old, I guess. And so he brought in industry experts, I guess is the best way to say it. Things started to change, as well as the financial condition of the company started to deteriorate. So I worked really hard to help keep things going. Really 2014, 2015, that set in. We worked really hard trying to keep things going until 2017. May of 2017, my dad let me go from that company. I spent that summer thinking of what I was going to do next and what my next brand would be. Spent a lot of time in the backyard just looking up at the clouds, and then went to a trade show in August of that year, the largest pet industry trade show, Super Zoo. And on the way back on the tarmac of the airplane, I said, identity, that sounds good. Asked a few people, came back a day later, filed the trademark for the name identity, and was ready to start working on that. But things progressed really quickly from there. I got called in. I'm the oldest in my family. Got called into a difficult family situation and had to basically help guide the company into a bankruptcy process. I had approached my dad at one point then, telling him I wanted to buy that company through Section 363 of the United States Bankruptcy Code. That turned into him asking me, you want to go and meet with an attorney with me? I said, that's probably not a good idea if I want to buy this thing, but I guess I will. Kind of a duty, I guess, as a son. And so we went and met with an attorney, and she said, why don't you try to put it through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy process? And so on my birthday in 2017, I got the pleasure, like 28 years old, of helping fill out the paperwork to take that company into federal bankruptcy protection. My brother and I tried to help get that through a confirmable plan, but it was really apparent early on that wasn't going to happen, especially if my dad didn't step away from that company. And we recognized that wasn't going to happen 2 or 3 days into the bankruptcy process. And so him and I pivoted, and we went and found an investor, and we put together a $3 million package to bid on that company in bankruptcy. And we fought from October to February, October of 2017 to February of 2018, trying to buy that company, make the changes we had wanted to make in the previous years, and continue on the path of success. The bankruptcy process is its own unique animal. Lawyers are great at protecting their clients, and so the judge never really heard our offer. Came down to the wire in the bidding process. The last day we finally withdrew. The judge sold the company to an investor who my dad had agreed to go and work for basically $25,000. My brother and I cried for maybe an hour. We went to a local restaurant, and on the napkin started establishing the identity brand that I had started working on back in August of 2017. And next thing you know, within a couple of days, we already been looking for manufacturers. Back when I was early on in the identity process, we'd identified another manufacturer really quickly in Canada. And so we got on a flight a couple of days after that company was sold, I think. Went up to Canada, told them our story, told them what we were trying to do, and that's create a high quality pet food company with North American land-based proteins. what we're doing, there's a couple companies doing it well, but they were doing it with products out of Thailand. And no one was doing a human grade, human quality product with regional sourcing, high meat content, identifiable ingredients that weren't factory farmed or rendered ingredients, sourced with North American land-based proteins. And so we set out to bring quality North American land-based proteins that aren't rendered ingredients or high quality proteins into the can segment. That was February of 2018. Kind of a fun story with that. We flew up to Canada. I had points from the previous job because I've traveled a lot building these brands. And so we use those points when you're starting out. You're trying to preserve cash. We use those points to fly Southwest to Albany, New York. We rented a car. We got in at like 9 o'clock at night. I told my brother, I'm not tired. Let's get our car. We were supposed to stay in Albany that night. I said, let's get a car and drive up to Montreal. We'll stay in Montreal. I'm not a big morning person. We'll be close by. We can get to our meeting at 10:30, I think it was. And so that's what we did. And we got to the US-Canada border it was 2 or 3 in the morning, I think. It might have been 3 or 4. Early in the morning, and you have 2 unemployed individuals from Colorado, which had just legalized marijuana. Evidently, that's a big drug trade route. And so the Canadian customs officials pulled us into secondary. It was an interesting experience. How much money do you have on you? We had no cash. Credit card access they asked for. I told them a number, looked at my brother, how much you have? We gave them a number, and they spent about an hour looking us up. So we finally got to our hotel room about 6 in the morning in Montreal, got a couple hours of sleep, went to meet with our manufacturer at a fantastic meeting and started building the core of the business we have today. And then we were spooked out after that experience in secondary. And so I'm like, let's get back home. Let's go back over the border to the United States. So we go to cross back over the border. They check out the whole car, tear apart the car, U.S. Customs and border officials do. And they say, go to Albany and fly back home to Colorado. We went down to New York City and went to the Big Ten basketball tournament. I said I went to Michigan. We went and saw them win the Big Ten basketball tournament that year. So that's kind of a fun little story of adventures we've had along the way when we started. But that led to us launching our first product, was 22 SKUs in total, 11 dog, 11 cat of canned dog and cat foods that launched on July 5th in the Chicago, Illinois market. And we've grown ever since then to be available in neighborhood pet stores in 19 states at this point. And we'll probably talk about it in a little bit. We had to pivot. And so a big driver of our growth today is online as well.
Hey, listeners, if unpredictable revenue is keeping you up at night, this is for you. Most e-commerce brands don't have an advertising problem. They have a predictability problem. Pat from Intergrowth here. We help brands to build a profitable meta ad system for their business within 90 days. If you're interested in learning more, go to intergrowth.com/CGS to book a strategy session with our team. Once again, that's intergrowth.com/CGS. I was going to say, I can imagine just being terrified being at customs, having everyone think that you have a bag of weed on you and looking to search the entire car at 4 o'clock in the morning.
2 unemployed guys. We were worried because you can't really tell them you're going up there. We're like, we don't have a document, a visa or whatever. Can't tell them we're going to meet with this manufacturer. So we're like, we had looked up some like museums and stuff before we went up there. And we're like, we're going to view this museum, that museum. They start asking questions. Where are you from? Colorado. Like I said, marijuana had just been legalized. 2 unemployed guys. I guess that'll draw skepticism every time.
I was going to say, I wanted to jump back to wild calling for a minute. I can only imagine that this was a terrible experience going through this. I mean, building a brand that large in the course of 2 years and ultimately getting kicked out of the business. I'm really curious to hear, though, in hindsight, is there any advice that you would give to maybe other business owners who are starting a business with a business partner or a couple business partners, or even bringing on an outside investor, any guidance you would give them based on things you wish that you could have done differently? Granted, you were 23 years old at the time, but is there anything that you would advise people to do a little bit differently during that founding process than the route that you took?
At Wild Calling?
Yeah, let's go wild calling.
Yeah, the process definitely isn't fun. I mean, I saw my family lose the house that I grew up in as a kid, right? My family literally lost everything in the bankruptcy. It led to personal bankruptcy for my parents. So it's difficult to see. Is there much I could have changed? No, it was a family business. If you're with a partner, I mean, the value of attorneys today, yeah, it looks expensive up front. They'll save you a lot of money in the long run. That's one thing I've learned throughout business. Rather than try and fight yourself always and be a bulldog, sometimes go and get an attorney who can fight for you and you'll know when you're right. But other than that, I mean, we did a lot right at Wild Calling. The decisions my brother and I wanted to make in the boardroom there would have been correct. We got beat out by experience, and it's informed our journey and why we trust a lot in younger people during that process. My grandpa and I, at night before he passed away, would, on paper, we basically created Wild Calling and how we would do it differently, the employees we would have, products we would have, how the company operated. And so I still have those somewhere today, everything we created. We had already put together the foundation of a pet food company and how to ideally operate it when I started Identity. My grandpa and I did that several years from 2014 until he passed away in 2017. We had a good guidebook there, but my grandpa was always frustrated because he was 80s, in his 80s at the time. And he was frustrated they weren't listening to the youth. The pet industry experience in the company thought that their experience would take them everywhere and made every decision right. And so it taught us to invest in younger people early on. That's why my brother and I, we don't hire based on experience necessarily. We hire based on a mindset and people that want to accomplish something in life, want to learn, and want to be challenged. Experience is grossly overrated in my experience in business and in life, especially if you're a hard worker and you're willing to go and get it. I went to the University of Michigan. I probably never should have went there. I think I was the first kid from Greeley, Colorado, where I grew up to ever go there. And I got there through unrelenting hard work and sacrifice. When other people were out at parties or having fun, I was in my bedroom till 3, 4, 5 a.m., sometimes 2, 3 days at a time with no sleep, trying to get that A so I could go and accomplish. And that's kind of my story overall. And that gut, grit, and determination has led to our success, I think, at Identity, helped our success at Wild Calling, definitely, because I mean, I used to spend basically every day of the year on the road except for the holidays. At one point, built a new house. I would fly out on Sunday afternoon, fly in, get home early in the morning on Saturday to mow the yard and go back out. And I did that process for weeks on end because I knew I could sell that product as a primary founder of it. I knew it inside and out, and I did that. And you have to be willing to make those sacrifices if you're going to see any success. I guess you could tell people, be ready to make the sacrifice, especially if you want to own the business. I own 100% of Identity Pet Nutrition with my brother. Today, we have no outside investors. That's a huge sacrifice. I could probably make a lot of money working for someone, but I've invested in myself and I reinvest in myself every day. And that results in me making, way less. I've never made $100,000 in my life, and I've made the least amount of money I've ever made in my life the last 8 years building this business. But I'm building for something in the future. I'm building to help pets, building to help employ people, I'm building to help my country. And I realize that sacrifice will be rewarded someday When you're 37 years old, it's not healthy. I experienced what it's like to be laid off and set at home for 6 months when you have dogged determination in you. You get bored, it's unhealthy. And at 37, what are you going to do? Go retire, go travel the world? You get tired of that really quickly. And when you put all of that in perspective, you're willing to keep making that sacrifice because you know what it'll lead to someday. Someday there will be gratification, or someday maybe the next generation of my family is set up to live a life that doesn't have the challenges that my life's had or my family's had. That's creating a legacy. My grandpa always used to say something. He said, "You can be rich, that's a moment in time, or you can be wealthy, and that means you lived a good life. People speak about you positively. They say you did something. And most of all, you got a family that loves you. And that's how you create wealth. It's enduring." And those are the big lessons that I've learned and why I stay, despite all the challenges, dogged in my determination and fighting. I mean, there's a lot of times you just want to give up. But when you've been through what I've been through and have those experiences and look at life that way, you keep fighting.
Hey, listeners, Pat from Intergrowth here. Field of Dreams was an exceptional movie, but man, did those guys get it wrong. If you build it, they will not come. We've been helping e-commerce brands since 2016 to acquire new customers more profitably. So after that website that you built goes live and when no one's coming in the door, we help you to get to the next stage. Interested in learning a little more? Go to intergrowth.com/CGS to schedule a complimentary consultation call with me and get to learn all about how we help businesses to level up. Once again, that's intergrowth.com/CGS. So I want to jump back to one of the items you talked about that you and your grandpa spent years, it sounds like during your free time, really restructuring a lot of the things that you wish you could have done differently at Wild Calling. And you hinted at, and I suspect that quite a few of those elements were then taken over to Identity. Talk to me about some of those things that you've done differently at Identity. You talked about not necessarily hiring for experience, but hiring for determination. What were some of the other big things that stood out to you?
Biggest thing is payroll related. My brother and I work every day. We don't take big salaries out of our company. We reinvest. That company, the two top guys took a lot of money out of it, paid themselves well. We don't do that. We also identified consumer packaged goods, which pet foods competes in that space, is very, very difficult. It's unlike any other business you ever create out there because you have to continually reinvest in inventory. Inventory is your currency for tomorrow so you can generate more revenue and stay in business. And a lot of people don't get that. I think that's why they end up selling to an investor or bringing in private equity because they want to take the money today for instant gratification rather than buying dog food and knowing that, yeah, I have assets, but it's dog food. And they get sidetracked there. We identified that that company had too big of a payroll. That's why we have a very small payroll. It was my brother and I for the first 6 years of business. We just started hiring employees. We are doing what we are doing right now. I mean, I generate most of the revenue as the sales guy. We don't have a full-time sales force. We found other ways. We invest a lot in Meta, for example, Google and Insta or Facebook and Instagram advertising. That's become our sales force. It's something we wanted to do at Wild Calling, but the industry expertise said, no, we need human capital. We need boots on the street. And we've been able to identify the boots on the street nowadays. And this is my personal opinion, but we're in the death of the salesman era. People don't have the dogged grit and determination or desire to go and get in their car and travel for a week and go in and meet 30 different store owners. They want to go in, give a promotion book, take care of issues, and feel like they solved a problem. We don't need people to do that right now. We need dogs that can go in and get our message across. And in this new era, social media and the internet do that the best. So we've invested heavily in digital marketing versus a sales force. We just added a third-party sales position that started today, actually. We'll probably add one or two salespeople in the next year, but we're not going to have, At one point, I think Wild Calling had 12 salespeople and a very significant payroll. We don't have that. That's the biggest thing we identified is when you're going to be in this business and if you want to keep ownership closely held, not bring in investors, there's a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is usually inventory or people. And it's hard because a lot of businesses will say, well, we need the people to sell the inventory. Or if we don't have the inventory, the people can't do their job. And so those two, people versus inventory, are always at a fight in a CPG company. And we identified that, and we've been fortunate in the business model we've built to be able to take that out, make digital advertising and marketing our sales engine to get our message across. And that's helped us control expenses while scaling and keeping ownership as a company. The other thing we didn't do is Wild Calling had a percentage that company was owned by investors. We didn't raise capital. We also didn't bring in they had a lot of like high interest debt and things. We've avoided that through very serious expense management, just good business principles to some degree. Wild Calling was a fortunate experience because we learned a lot of what to do, but we also learned a lot of what not to do. And you learn from your failure, right? I don't know if I'd call Wild Calling. It's certainly not a personal failure. The company failed as a company, but I did a lot of great things there. My brother did a lot of great things. A lot of other people did a lot of great things there. So it was a vessel to teach people a lesson. Some people, that lesson was a lot more difficult and hard. It was felt a lot more than others. The biggest thing that we've done is really control expense management, not have that big sales team, figure out a way how to sell our products and other means, and work as founders in the business day to day. There's this big perception out there that you're going to start a business and passive income. That's the biggest hoax that I've ever heard. Everyone wants passive income. I don't think there's such a thing. To do something well and to have ownership, 100% ownership in it, you're going to have to work. You're going to have to work like a dog. I work like 17, 18, 19-hour days sometimes, a lot of times. That's how you keep ownership of something. And if you go back and look in our histories, some of the most successful entrepreneurs, yeah, they're known as a success now, but it was 20, 30, 40 years of dogged hard work, not home much. Those are the stories that get missed and the stories that I wish were told, because it's easy to go and raise capital and hire a lot of people and then become a manager of those people. But it's another thing to own the company, work really hard every day to build something and build it at a faster than normal rate. It's very rewarding when you start to see some success and it fuels you wanting to see more success. There's a very big sense of pride that comes from that ownership because it's becoming more and more rare. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that's very much how I feel. The small business mentality is getting lost in this country. I think it's unfortunate. Everything's consolidating around us. And there's a lot of pride in going and raising capital and putting a press release out there and saying, I raised $2 million at a $30 million valuation. And yeah, that might be great for you as a founder on paper. You can say you're worth a lot of money, but where's that money going to get you? Did it buy you more happiness overnight? Yeah, I get you can work less, maybe spend more time with your kids, but is that healthy and good for you long run? For a lot of people, I'd bargain to say no, but you have to be willing to sacrifice and go through some really difficult times and work your way through them and solve challenges, which is what we're doing really well at Identity.
One of the questions I want to get into before we wrap up today, as you mentioned at the very top, right now you're in a space that is filled with PE owned dog food brands that have taken on large external funding rounds. How do you manage to compete against some of these brands that probably on paper, it seems like they have an unlimited budget to work with?
I can do the exact same thing private equity can do. Private equity sells you on, you need people to help you scale this. That's for the most part a lie. They won't bring in any more help. In a lot of ways, they'll saddle your company with a lot of expensive people who have a pedigree at a big company doesn't mean you're going to reap success from that. I can go out and when you look at how private equity finances these businesses after they purchase them and how they lever them up with expense management and using things like the Small Business Administration or other lending outlets, I can borrow just like them. Now you have to be okay, right? I got a few $1,000,000 of debt on my head. My brother's got a few $1,000,000 of debt on his head. You got personal guarantees out there. You have to be okay with that, but we have a plan and we know when that's going to be paid off. We're paying principal and interest every month on any debt that we have, not interest only like some of our competitors. And so we have a very solid future because we have a plan of how to get there. Private equity comes in, they lever your business up, hire that talent, and it's a shot in the dark. They're just hoping they can grow the revenue quick enough to get out of the financial situation that's created and sell it to someone else. It takes more time when you're doing it like us because it's a slower growth pattern. You're not going to get 1,000, 2,000% like some of these companies get. But I mean, we just were announced yesterday. We're 41 on the Inc. regionals list in the Rocky Mountain region, 64% 2-year growth rate. We took a step back from growth in 2024. We let some customers go because of challenges with them. They weren't the right customers for us. Took a step back. We still grew over the last 2 years, 64%. And I was looking at 3 years for the Inc. 5000 list that's upcoming, and we're at like 99%. So we're growing 60 to 100% over these time periods, which is still really quick. And it compounds over 20 years. That compounds into a really nice, significant business. But it's a mindset difference as well that helps us get there. Today, a lot of Americans, a lot of consumers especially, are skeptical of private equity because they know they come in, lever it up. Typically, they'll change the formulation to get more margin. Big conglomerate. I saw this one recently. Cholula was bought. They took out natural vinegar and put in acetic acid and natural flavor. That's the type of ingredient change that happens in our industry all day. Private equity groups come in, they take the original whole food formulation that the company found success with, reformulate it to get more margin, bring in their top tier talent to hopefully grow really quickly, and they try and grow at all costs. And yeah, some are successful and they sell and they exit and they're able to recoup that. But the model's built on basically 70% failure, 30% success, just hoping that those 30% that succeed at a rate that is way bigger than the failures, which, I challenge every small business owner to rethink before you make that decision because, yeah, they're going to pad your pockets with a nice lump sum. But I know a lot of founders who have sold to private equity and they're back trying to get into pet, or they've started another pet food company because they missed something in their life. And it's like, man, you sold your company, you're out 5, 10, 15, 20 years with the non-compete, and you want back in despite getting this lump sum. And it's because, they got dogged determination in them. They want to do something and they realize money will go quickly if you're doing nothing. Most private equity situations don't end positively. So I always tell everyone, how are you doing what you're doing? I just identified, and I feel lucky. Part of it's my experience. I pitched over 600 or 700 private equity groups at Wild Calling trying to help sell that company. So I learned a lot there. I learned a lot. What I didn't mention was in 2008, my dad was one of the first natural pet food distributors, and he was one of the first in the industry to sell that company to private equity. I saw what happened there. So I've had experience with it. I've seen it, and my brother and I have the mindset of we can do the exact same thing they're doing. It's just we have the personal exposure, the personal risk, whereas they're putting it into a fund and it's their limited partners' money who they're going to lose, not theirs. It makes risk management a different story. We manage risk a lot differently versus they're willing to take more risks. It's a whole mindset shift. When we make quality products, they want to maximize profit. We just identified early on, we can do the same thing, but with a different mindset. And that's what the American consumer wants. That's what we want. And at the end of the day, yeah, we're levered up. We got personal guarantees, but I came into this world with nothing. So if I have nothing tomorrow, great, I get a restart. I've already done that before. Back at Wild Calling, I lost my job, my livelihood, restarted. I invested in myself. You can't be scared to lose money and material things when you can create something great that'll give back to your country, to other people, hopefully enrich their lives and hopefully inspire them. And when you look at the great entrepreneurs out there, the great companies, whether it's Nike, Disney, Apple, on and on and on, they all have different stories. Some of them might have done it with investors at a certain point. They get at a certain point wanting to de-risk. But more people need to realize you can do the exact same thing private equity will do with your business. It's just going to take a little bit longer to get to your end game. And that big lump sum of money sounds good today, but you're going to grow tired of it really quickly. So don't forget the pleasure you're having coming to work every day, and the people you're helping, and the economy you're helping grow. You need to remember that before you sell your business. Again, get off my soapbox.
Jeremy, this has been amazing. For listeners that want to connect with you, whether it be on LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it, where are you most active? Where can people find you online?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. Get a lot of my business musings across on LinkedIn. And then it's a little more spicy of a take, a little more politics and intertwined. I got a new Substack out there that I'm publishing some more long form type stuff, or stuff that might not really fit on LinkedIn, or I want to take a little more risk on personally. So my Substack, LinkedIn are the best places. If you want to learn more about our company, identitypet.com is a great place. Message in, make sure I get the message. Those are probably the best places to reach out to me.
I love it. I love it. Jeremy, this has been amazing. Once again, listeners, this is Jeremy Petersen, the founder, president, and CEO over at Identity Pet Nutrition. Jeremy, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to get our story out there.
Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.